Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I talk about missed opportunities at the big two all the time. Plenty of problems with Marvel, plenty of problems with DC, and they do have problems, but they also do put out a lot of books, and they continue to truck along, and they're the market incumbents. So as much as they, do things poorly or do things wrong, the reality is they've also got a lot of momentum behind them. This is one of those situations where I don't know right now, and we'll get to it in another video probably, but there's this Comic-Con puts out like the last year was the best year for comics, and they total the numbers up, and then you dig in, the numbers are a little phony in some areas, a little fuzzy in others. But the part that kind of irks me about the whole thing is that it's trying to refute basically comments from crazy people. So that is the hey, I thought people said comics were dying. It's like nobody's serious with saying that. Now, maybe it's comics are dying for them. Sure, comics could be dying for them, just like all kinds of things die for people all the time. You lose interest. But, and yes, there are definitely people out there. It's like the comics industry is dying for good. It's clearly not dying. That's just a dumb thing to say. But that doesn't mean the inverse. We don't live in a world of the comics industry is completely dying or the comics industry is doing amazing. That's why that entire debate, I hate. It's like, okay, it can't be A, so it has to be B. It's like, yeah, those are two crazy extremes, and they don't even add up. Clearly, the comics industry is not dying. Comics are being pushed out into the market at a higher percentage almost than ever before, and it's absurd. Clearly, comics are not doing great because creators continuously are on GoFundMe's. There's been no significant raise or pay increase in rates in 30 years, and the circulation of these books are low, even if the total volumes are up. So let's stop playing in two big fantasy worlds and actually get to the real problems, which is what we talk about all the time. Anyway, we spend a lot of time talking about Marvel and DC. Let's talk about the smaller guys. So here's a mail from a viewer and poses a good question, which is missed opportunity for smaller publishers. And here goes. It says, hey, Perch, enjoy your videos, and I'm sorry to say, agree with most of your takes, especially when it comes to Marvel DC. The two lost me a while ago, but I don't really see a reason to consistently decry their state of affairs. It seems like a waste of energy, and well, I'm also an adult, so wait a minute, what are you saying here? Exactly. Anyway, sorry. With that being said, I have a feeling there is a sizable audience that is tuned out, much like me, which I believe provides an opportunity for smaller publishers to seize upon. The opportunity I reference is, why don't smaller publishers like Boom, IDW, Aftershock, etc. develop their own shared universe superhero comic books? I know Dark Horse tried to do this in the past, like the way past. This is like the late 80s, early 90s, right? And Valiant did as well, of course. I don't think it was super successful, but it seems like the time might be ripe for an attempt now. It may be, but there's two factors there. But anyway, let's finish the mail. There seem to be a number of advantages that a publisher could capitalize in by simply dedicating 4 to 5 titles a month, branding it to make it clear those titles are interconnected, and positioning themselves as the anti-Marvel and DC. Not the least of all, they would own the IP outright. It doesn't even need to be a superhero universe. Brand a sci-fi, fantasy, or any adventure series that lends itself to serialized storytelling. It doesn't seem like it would be difficult to commission work for hire to develop this shared universe vision. There are ideas everywhere, and everyone has something to contribute. I know economics is the greatest limitation of this group of companies, but it seems funding for entertainment ventures is available to many of them, though it might be drying up soon. I know I'm describing as Jim Shooter's Valiant of the early 90s, but I think there are many lessons that be gleaned from that endeavor. And while I'm also giving away good ideas for free, this publisher should also hire 2 top-tier artists with similar styles to exclusive multi-year contracts to be the look of the line. Get them to be covers, pinups, post art, anything and everything to get this new universe out there. Would love to know what you think. Okay, so it's a good idea, but it does have flaws to it. And the flaws are really, there's many. Okay, so first of all, part of what you're describing might be AWA, the Artists, Writers, and Artisans, Mike Diodato, and there's a couple of artists that are there that do regular work or do covers or try and brand it like a shared line. But AWA, even though I like a great number of the books that come out there, I think they do great work. it hasn't gotten people's attention. It hasn't moved the needle. And part of the problem is the overall kind of marketing and just messaging of these books is incredibly difficult right now. It's particularly if you're going to use old styles, and that's what a lot of the comic publishers do. They're very locked into this world of you get your diamond account, you put your stuff in previews, you do random kind of efforts on social media, and you hire people who typically are from comics. So you kind of get the same ideas recycled over and over and over again, and that's why shared universes to date haven't particularly worked. In part because some of the people who have come about and tried to do it are people who worked for Marvel and DC in the past. So the challenge there is when you work for Marvel and DC, you come into that job with a heavier bankroll and you have 40 years or more of credibility of that line. So your job of having to market those books is vastly different than doing something new. And that's why you see so many problems. I actually think that a shared superhero universe would do a lot better if it was done by people who are pretty much outside the industry, non-veterans, non-people that you know, including even the artists. I'd go find a couple top tier artists, but I wouldn't necessarily go try and kind of grab people from the past and bring them in. I'd go look for new people. I'd go look for people in other regions, perhaps, that are popular there and bring them over. But just as long as the talent is there to be able to do this work, to give it this distinctive, regular look. I think that anytime you bring in people from and it's a tough balance. And keep in mind, I'm saying this as somebody who loves a lot of the writers and the artists from the past. But the challenge is you're coming out to do something new. It truly needs to feel like it's new. And if you bring in, somebody who has this background and is recognizable, people are going to naturally, tie that your new effort to whatever was done in the past, and it then creates an interesting additional hurdle to go after. I think that I would love to see it, and I do think it's not as much work as people think. But I also think it's kind of the DCEU problem, is that the DC universe for the movies said we want our version of the Marvel universe. Actually, lots of companies did the Universal Monster kind of thing, and so they set out with the idea of like, hey, we've got to get to the Avengers movie as fast as we can because we want that money. And so they set up a lot of things, and it no longer feels organic. It feels like the company's forcing it on you. And people who are reading or watching movies or comics, they tend to be very adverse to that. They can smell it coming. They're like, I really don't want to be forced into this shared universe. I'd like it just to kind of roll out naturally. I'd like to invest in it, and I'd like to find myself being drawn there on my own rather than being drugged there. And I think that's another problem that a lot of these companies wind up having. Overall, look, I think it's a very good idea, and I do think it's a missed opportunity. The most interesting thing about what you say there, I think, in my mind, is to brand yourself as the anti-Marvel in DC. And I think that if you had a very clever, very sharp, and very aggressive marketing department or somebody, creative vision there, I think you could go out and I think you could do counter marketing. I wouldn't do your marketing. I wouldn't get into the politics of it. I wouldn't go out there and say we're not, SJW comics like Marvel. I wouldn't market that way. I'd say we're not corporate crap like Marvel. We're not trying to shill your dollars so you can, we can funnel you into a theme park. We're not, we're not a comic company owned by a cellular phone company or a nature program. We are actually, I would market that way. I would be aggressive. I would be mean, and I would market that. I'm going to market there. The other stuff, put it this way. I've seen a lot of, and a lot of the crowdfunders do we're not, woke comics like Marvel. Don't say it. Just be it. To me, I think that marketing is a turnoff. Yes, it will grab some people in, but what would be far better is just be the thing you say. Just be that. Just put out the content and let people see it for themselves. Let your audience, your readers, and your customers say that about you. By leading that, it's marketing with negativity. It's saying, we're not, this type of content. that we know some people like, maybe, I don't know. But it's just, it sets the wrong tone. Far better is to lean into it. Like, we're not going to take your money to shill a movie, and we're not going to get you wrapped up in a comic only to have to change it 2 years down the line because the movie actor is different from the comic, and then we're going to revert everything. We're not going to get into that kind of bullshit. We're going to give you superhero comics, classic books, things that you love. We're going to give you that shared universe, period. I mean, lots of people who are frustrated with Marvel and DC will say things like, keep the politics and the social stuff out of the books, then keep them out of everything. Don't counter program by talking politics again. You know what I mean? But I think bill yourself as the anti-Marvel, anti-DC, go in with a schedule, something people can rely on. If you think that you can put out, a book a month, do one book a month. Don't try and, advertise you're going to put out 6 and then screw it up. This is Image's original problem and have massive delays and all that other stuff. Just go out, best foot forward, be relentless, do your shared universe, and I think life will take care of itself. But anyway, it's an interesting topic. I do think it's a missed opportunity for small publishers, but I think it's possibly harder to obtain than it might seem. So anyway, wonderful question, wonderful ideas, and yeah, I mean, I would love to see it. I would love to see it's funny. A lot of the comic writers are calling themselves punk rock now. Or punk rock. I would love to see a true anti-establishment comic company come up and just take no prisoners and be like, we're doing these. I mean, be super aggressive. You would get hammered on Twitter, and you would get hammered from the quote unquote comic book establishment. But the reality is, back in the 80s and 90s, comic books were meant to be kind of the this counterculture, we do what we want kind of thing. And now, the comic community, the comic creators, a lot of them march with just one voice, one thought, one opinion. It's like the worst of it is when like one person will come up. It was that pledge, the pledge. I pledge I won't do dodgy things to women at conventions. Which, I mean, cool. How about you don't do it? It's very easy just not to do those things. Posting up a JPEG of your little mission. Nothing says we're punk rock, we're creative freedom. Then hey, we're all going to post up this exact same JPEG, promising not to do dodgy shit that we shouldn't have done in the first place. Like, ugh, I don't know. It's like tell me you're the establishment without telling me you're establishment. Anyway, thank you very much for the question, and thanks for listening.